we get yet again another comic featuring the Spider-Goblin character. If you're still interested in what Marvel is doing with the Spider-Goblin concept, well, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to be reviewing the Amazing Spider-Man number 52. Spoiler warning, we will be diving into the contents of the comic book, so if you haven't read it, just as a heads up. And if you're enjoying this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's jump right into this comic book. This story begins exactly where the previous issue left off. Chasm shows up, and now there's a confrontation between him and the Spider-Goblin. We get this narration from Kraven as he compares the situation to two silverback gorillas fighting each other in the Congo. As Kraven is shamelessly running away from the situation without hesitation, he knows that only one of these two will come out alive. Both Chasm and the Spider-Goblin begin fighting each other at that moment. At this point in the comic, I'm thinking to myself, wow, they really made Kraven just a shameless coward. At least I'm mildly interested in the fight between the Spider-Goblin and Chasm and see where they're gonna take that. Then we get the Green Goblin as Norman Osborn, and he's calling one of his employees that handles the business aspect of his corporation. Norman is telling one of his employees to move these specific subsidiaries over to Peter Parker's ownership. The employee that's following Norman's orders is trying to make sense of these actions. Before Norman gets mad about this employee questioning his actions, he tells him that he wants to pass on these future liability company issues over to Peter Parker and have Peter responsible over the actions of Oscorp. But before actually getting angry at the employee, even though he just told them the reasons why he's doing this, he notices Kamala Khan at the security camera and she's at the front desk. So the Green Goblin as Norman hangs up on his current call and calls the front desk. The receptionist lady picks up the phone and Norman just yells at her in one of those completely unfair situations. Of course, might I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Green Goblin cosplaying as Norman Osborn in this situation. As Norman is yelling at the receptionist lady, he's also looking at the security camera. He's just specifically looking at Kamala Khan. The comic then throws a Resident Evil moment where Kamala Khan just stares at the camera, completely weirding out Norman Osborn because he's just like, what are you looking at? I suppose that was meant to be a funny moment, but I didn't get a laugh. Kamala Khan then tells the receptionist lady that she's actually leaving. She just wanted to see how she was going to be received. And as Kamala Khan storms out, she says, "I'll catch Mr. Osborn later." It's crazy to see that as Peter's fighting for his life, being the Spider-Goblin and fighting Chasm, the Green Goblin as Norman Osborn is just continuously setting up Peter for failure. We've only yet to know the consequences of what Norman is doing here in this moment. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we move back to the actual confrontation between Chasm and the Spider-Goblin. During their battle, Spider-Goblin is telling Ben that he doesn't have any sympathies for him. The Spider-Goblin believes this is just one moment in his life where Chasm shows up and just tries to mess with them. But it seems that Chasm is genuinely trying to help out in this situation. He calls the Spider-Goblin an idiot and says, "You think I'm here to fight you?" Chasm smacks the Spider-Goblin into the ground, preventing the Spider-Goblin from doing anything else, and Ben tells him, "I was in the Wrinkler device. I got a glimpse of what the Green Goblin put in your head. He's using you, and I'm here to put an end to it, one way or another." But the Spider-Goblin crouches as he summons his glider right behind him, and he tells Ben, "My God, you're delusional. Still trying to be a hero. You actually think someone as pathetic as you can save me?" With the Spider-Goblin's glider coming up right behind him, the Spider-Goblin jumps on his glider. Before Chasm gets hit by the full blunt of this force, the Spider-Goblin tells him, "Well, come on, Ben. You want to save me?" Ben gets hit by the glider and goes flying into a brick pillar with him. The pillar collapses and Chasm receives all this force. The Spider-Goblin, while doing this attack, just tells Chasm, "Save me, save me." Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now we're getting Chasm being played as a hero, genuinely trying to save Spider-Man from the situation. And Spider-Man being a goblin right now, he's just mocking Ben Reilly for being a delusional hero. Or wanna be at least. Currently at the moment, we don't really have a genuine reason as to why Ben Reilly is trying to help out Spider-Man in the situation. All that we have been told is that he's gotten a vision where Spider-Man has just gotten in trouble with the Wrinkler device. But why are we getting this sudden change of heart from Chasm? Why is he helping out in the situation? I wonder if that's gonna get explained. Then we change our story over to New Jersey, where we join Kamala Khan in investigating this facility. Inside of the warehouse, there's remembers this machine that Norman used to help out Peter back in the Amazing Spider-Man number 24 to go to another dimension and help MJ. Apparently that machine is still in that warehouse and they just never did anything else with it. They never moved it, never disassembled it. They just have this machine that takes you to this other specific dimension. That's crazy. And worst of all, the hole that was made on the side of the wall back then is still there. They never blocked it or anything. Miss Marvel just walks in. Miss Marvel does narrate the fact that this machine was the cause that pulled her into Norman Osborn's orbit, as well as Peter Parker's. Miss Marvel eventually remembers her sacrifice that she had to do back in issue 25 to try to save MJ as well as the dimension itself. You're probably wondering how is she still here if she sacrificed herself. At some point during the X-Men comics, she was just revived, making her a mutant. While Miss Marvel is investigating this warehouse, Dr. Octopus's arms sneak up right behind her. She quickly turns around yelling "Doc Ock," makes a huge fist and punches the character away, telling them to back off. This mysterious character wearing the Dr. Octopus arms goes flying and he's just yelling "Wait!" He crashes into J. Jonah Jameson's face and they both land on the ground. Now we get revealed that Dr. Connors is currently wearing the original Dr. Octopus arms. J. Jonah Jameson is also there, as well as another scientist that accompanied Dr. Connors. Now we get revealed that the mysterious character currently wearing the original Dr. Octopus's arms is actually Dr. Connors, being accompanied by J. Jonah Jameson, as well as another scientist that is just tagging along Dr. Connors. Miss Marvel questions, what is even going on here? And then the ChatGPT character, the Living Brain, walks up and he says, generating answer. Answer to query. What is going on here? Generated. You're late. That's what's going on here. Miss Marvel questions, I'm late? Miss Marvel then says, I don't know who you are. I don't have time for games. The Green Goblin is back and that means I'm supposed to meet Spider-Man here. Our favorite Living Brain ChatGPT character then says, I know your and Spider-Man's plan, Miss Khan. It was I who helped him make it. So now this part in the story, the Living Brain is telling us that it had made a plan with Spider-Man in case the Green Goblin had risen up. Apparently Miss Marvel and Spider-Man had also made a plan that we're just now hearing about. And this supposed plan is also the same exact one that Spider-Man had made with the Living Brain. Now our team consisting of the Living Brain, J. Jonah Jameson, Dr. Connors, and this random scientist now has Miss Marvel joining the group. The comic then continues with the confrontation between the Spider-Goblin and Chasm. After Chasm was sent directly into a brick pillar. Chasm is just on the ground with the Spider-Goblin's glider just over him. The Spider-Goblin towers over Chasm and Spider-Goblin tells him, you must have known it would end this way. It never goes well for you. When you stand between me and something I want. The Spider-Goblin is also holding the spear that Kraven brought in earlier. It seems that he's specifically there just for the spear itself. Everyone that had to be there is just casualties. Chasm then tells him, you have no idea what you want. You're doing the Green Goblin's bidding, and you don't even know it. The Spider-Goblin then tells Ben, ha, I suppose you would know. Spider-Goblin smacks Ben in the face using the spear's pointy end, and tells him, Benny boy, my little clone, the one who thought he can steal my life. Spider-Goblin grabs Chasm by the costume to butt heads, and Chasm tells Spider-Goblin, Peter, you have to fight this. Spider-Goblin then headbutts Chasm and tells him, quiet, Benny boy. I have a secret identity to keep after all. Ladies and gentlemen, this personally feels like this Green Goblin is written specifically to take up the personalities of everyone on the internet that has hated this comic run so far. This is exactly what this feels like to me. It even gets worse later in the comic, as I'll continue explaining. Like, how can you possibly make a comment saying, I have a secret identity to keep after all? So far in this specific volume comic run, I've seen that same exact thing used twice. And I feel like it was acknowledging the previous moments in the comic volume run itself, where Peter just was going around all willy-nilly telling everyone that he was Spider-Man, there was no necessity to keep a secret identity. And seeing that referenced in Spider-Goblin's dialogue just makes me believe that Spider-Goblin is the impersonation and representation of just everyone that's angry over this comic. Now before I turn this review into a rant, let's move on to what else this comic brings. We're joined by the Living Brain and his newly assembled team featuring Miss Marvel, J. Jonah Jameson, Dr. Connors, and another scientist. And the Living Brain is explaining Norman Osborn's plan to the group. He tells them, as you can see, Osborn has been buying new companies, drastically expanding the Oscorp empire. Most alarmingly, he's putting these companies in Peter Parker's name. This is when Miss Marvel does question to the Living Brain where it got all this data. And I noticed that the Living Brain didn't even answer this question at all. He just starts talking about this new body that he created created for himself. Apparently it limits his living brain function to a very small amount, so he no longer understands the universe or apparently cheese. He still functions to properly serve Spider-Man's plan. Ms. Marvel mentions the big elephant in the room. The plan itself needs Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is missing in action. The living brain then mentions that it's able to improvise the plan, and it actually found another Spider-Man. You will not believe, ladies and gentlemen, the character that gets introduced into the team at this moment. Out of all the different Spider-Man characters that this living brain could have introduced as part of the team, as part of the plan, they needed a Spider-Man for the plan itself, and the living brain managed to recruit Wreck Rap. Y'all remember Wreck Rap, everyone's favorite character? Well, the living brain recruited him for the team. I really thought they were gonna throw like Miles in there, but no, they threw Wreck Rap in there. Apparently this guy is still out and about doing his own thing, and he was invited by the living brain. Did the story itself just get absurdly goofier than it already previously was? Now for the comic's final section, it goes right back into the fight between Spider-Goblin and Chasm. Chasm is definitely just getting beat down, ladies and gentlemen, in this comic. I wonder if that means that Spider-Goblin is technically stronger than Chasm? Chasm is definitely getting his ass beat in this comic. So in terms of power levels, which one of them is stronger? As Chasm is getting his head stomped in, a Spider-Goblin is telling him, "You're impotent, ineffective. You always have been. I've buried Spider-Man in so much hate and fear that no one can find him." The Spider-Goblin then gets interrupted by whatever Chasm is doing. But before we go into whatever Chasm is doing, I want to talk about what I was going on about earlier, about the Spider-Goblin being a representation of everyone online hating the Spider-Man comics right now. I mean, come on, burying Spider-Man with so much hate, that's gotta be everyone online just hating on the Spider-Man comics for just being ass in general. This Spider-Goblin has to be a representation of all that hate online. Now back to the story itself. The Spider-Goblin now has Chasm by the face, and this is when we get a new power revealed that Chasm has. Chasm was able to engulf the Spider-Goblin with his psychoreactive goo. The goo itself managed to help out Spider-Man, forcing the Green Goblin personality away and bringing Spider-Man back to his normal self. Also changing his costume. I don't exactly know how that works out, but yeah, Spider-Man is wearing that red and blue costume again. Now, according to the story, the goo that Ben Reilly fell in that turned him into Chasm, turned him crazy. Chasm is able to utilize that goo itself to infect others and somehow manipulate their state of mind. This is definitely new, ladies and gentlemen. Now that Spider-Man's reverted back to his normal self, he questions, "What am I doing here?" Spider-Man notices the spear that Kraven had earlier and picks it up and says, "The spear? He sent me for this. I think it's the only thing that can stop him." Spider-Man looks over at Ben Reilly and thanks him for saving him. After thanking Ben Reilly, Spider-Man leaves to go confront Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin with a spear. And I'm questioning to myself, if the Green Goblin needs the spear, why is Spider-Man taking it with him? That's literally what the Green Goblin wants, dog. Okay, yeah, I know Spider-Man might have a plan, or like it was stated, he has a plan with the living brain. We've yet to know what that plan is, and how it involves with the spear. But why are we taking it to the Green Goblin? Come on, that's exactly what he wants. Anyways, Spider-Man leaves, and Chasm is left alone with Kraven, as it just gets told throughout the story that Kraven is honestly just hiding behind watching all this happen. Chasm then brings up the fact that the goo that he was using on the Spider-Goblin, it was actually intended to take him out. Apparently, he wasn't even intentionally helping out Spider-Man, he was just trying to off him. That's actually a pretty funny twist. I kinda like that. Especially since Chasm's life was literally on the line. The story then ends with Spider-Man having some twitches because the programming that turned him back to normal is actually wearing off. It seems that it's actually not permanent. So whatever Spider-Man has to do, he has to do it fast. And we're left on a to be continued, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the story is definitely just another addition to the Spider-Goblin lore. This issue I definitely felt like it was below average. Nothing to really go out of your way to pursue any further. I did hear recently that they might change the writer. They might change the Amazing Spider-Man writer, Zeb Wells, to just a completely different person. And I'm totally for it if this is how they're gonna pursue the Amazing Spider-Man comics any further. Anyways, that is all I have for you today, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.